Welcome to the HoosLeft podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier Left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. So, all right, Indiana, we made it through the primary. Hopefully you've listened to last week's recap episode, so you know the lay of the land going into this, yet again, most important election of our lifetimes. In that episode, I ran down the finalists in this November's statewide contest, congressional races, and notable statehouse showdowns. I also recapped the unusually contentious Democrat-on-Democrat action from Monroe County's county commissioner matchups. I took a particular interest in Monroe, home to Bloomington and home to HoosLeft, because most counties in the state suffer one-party Republican rule, while here, Democrats hold all of the county's major offices. Anyway, now that we've closed the page on the primary and begin to turn our attention to the 2024 general election, I will begin with one of those Republican-dominated counties and one Democrat trying to break the stranglehold. In 2023, the 6 fastest-growing counties in the state were suburban, quote-unquote, donut counties around Indianapolis. One of those is Johnson County. With Franklin as its seat of government, Johnson County is also home to Greenwood, Whiteland, Bargersville, Trafalgar, and Edinburgh. Just as Democrats hold every major office in Monroe County, Republicans hold every office in Johnson County. And while that may be the case now, areas just like Johnson County are increasingly trending Democratic, and this may be the year for a breakthrough. Here's University of Kentucky professor Stephen Voss in a Vox article from Christian Paz after last year's municipal elections. Quote, "These places are places where you used to have Chamber of Commerce Republicans, and now you have their grandkids who are much more progressive. People talk about abortion as a mobilizer for upper status professionals, and it is. It's a part of what you're seeing, a backlash against the culture war conservatism of the Republican Party." End quote. Later in the article, Voss continues, quote, "Suburbs contain large concentrations of high-propensity voters, those most likely to vote in any election, with college degrees and high incomes. They live in economically vibrant and growing regions outside of major cities, as well as in large towns and smaller cities. They were once swing voters, but have moved more solidly Democratic since 2016. And they're the reason Democrats did so well during the 2018 and 2022 midterms, as well as why they were able to win so many competitive contests in 2020's presidential year elections." End quote. Finally, Paz, the author, ends that piece thusly, quote, "What the last few special off-year and midterm elections have shown is that the trend of Democrats performing well in suburbs and among wealthier and better educated voters continues. That Democrats can do well in an off year when these are the kinds of voters most likely to turn out is not a surprise, but it should still serve as a warning to Republicans that their branding problem with these voters isn't just going to go away. Democrats have a big opportunity to shore up support among these communities and continue to frame Republicans as politically toxic, especially with Trump at the top of the ticket." End quote. Hey, that describes now. That describes this election again with the Orange Goblin at the top of the Republican ticket. So I caught up with someone on the front lines of the fight to swing the suburbs blue, Johnson County Democrat Blythe Potter. Blythe is one of these former Republicans who left the party because of their socially regressive extremism and threats to our basic freedoms. Potter is a proud Army veteran, Bargersville resident, and a mom to a future Center Grove student. She is co-owner of Bargersville Wellness and has a BAS in massage therapy and MBA in conscious capitalism from Siena Heights University. At her salon and studio, she works as an esthetician, massage therapist, and yoga teacher. And this November, she is up for election to the Johnson County Council. In this upcoming interview, we will talk briefly about Blythe's time in the Army before turning to her political journey. We'll discuss her core political values, which haven't changed even as her former party grew more and more extreme. Zooming into the issues specific to Johnson County, we'll talk about responsibly managing growth, balancing the demand for more housing, more amenities, and more infrastructure with the need to protect green spaces. We'll discuss living in a low-tax jurisdiction and why that isn't as sweet as it sounds, before turning to the reality of politicking while adorned in piercings and tattoos. But first, please consider supporting this project with a financial contribution. You know, in 2022, in the wake of the corrupted Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, I was furious on behalf of the women in my life, in this state, and across the country. The rushed special session of the General Assembly that summer was the first time I had participated in a political protest. I had spent my whole adult life squandering the privilege I have in this society as a straight white man. I knew I needed to do more, but wasn't quite sure what that looked like. I didn't know anybody in political circles. My time was consumed by work and family. So, I started writing on Substack in what little spare time I had. I've branched into campaign finance research, and I started this podcast because the world needs more basic white guys with podcasts. Apparently, it's some sort of recessive trait amongst us. Who knew? But seriously, this place has been my way of climbing the nearest hill and shouting, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." And you, as a Hoosier or a citizen of any captured, gerrymandered red state, should be just as mad. We should be mad together and turn our righteous fury into action. I knew as early as 2021 that this year, 2024, was going to be an incredibly difficult year, but not quite the way it's shaken out. My special character, my guy, my son, passed away in January, and we all in my family here are still a wreck and still working through grief brain. And his 16-year-old sister in particular is not coping well and is up to 16-year-old shit, and consequently spending some time with family far from here. So, on top of the grief and that overwhelming sense of being a failure as a parent, there are also an uncomfortable number of our neighbors willing to sacrifice our country to the false religion of Christian nationalism. Like, by the way, could it be any more ironic? Trump is literally a golden calf. He is the veal of people, a pampered son, born of privilege, never knowing real work, tender meat, grazing lazily while the little people labor, and then spray-painted gold. Anyway, for a couple months after my son passed, I was simultaneously paralyzed by grief and driven to help ensure other parents would never know that pain in the only way I know how, because I don't know how to people. I'm good at seeing things from 30,000 feet, but the closer you zoom in and the more awkward I get. But I doubled down on HoosLeft in an effort to shed more light on Indiana politics, where our far-right Republican supermajority and their financial benefactors enact policies that literally harm our children by allowing guns to flood our communities, by bullying queer youth, and by poisoning our environment, or by driving the next generation out of state with their Dark Ages worldview. I didn't take on any work outside of this project for a few months there, and so many of you have been so supportive. The subscriber base has grown tremendously. We just recently hit our 1,000th subscriber on Substack. Thank you so much. I am humbled and honored to know I've got a small fraction of that 1,000, a core group of people who believe enough in me to give financial support. I've been able to publish more frequently, learn new skills, and expand beyond audio into video. But at this time, it is not sustainable full-time. So I've had to put on the Carhartt or the generic version because that stuff's expensive. Had to put that on once again, scraping and sanding, priming and painting, trimming and mulching, and working on this project whenever I can. I'd much rather devote my working time to this and to you, but I can only give this project the attention it truly deserves with your help. I hope you'll consider joining that core group. I will continue to work to highlight Indiana's bad actors so we can replace them with more empathetic leadership and also shine the spotlight on the activists, organizations, and elected officials who are doing the hard work to build a more just, equitable, and compassionate Indiana for the next generation of Hoosiers. And I will take on Democrats, too, when they put their donors over their voters, when they talk out of both sides of their mouths, and when they fail to push back against GOP authoritarian extremism with the necessary urgency and tenacity. I resisted working within the Democratic Party for a long time, but the more I learn about how our election system works, the more I've come to understand how entrenched the two-party system is. We have to use the two-party system we have in order to rid ourselves of the two-party system. Right now, the Democratic Party is the best vehicle, but remember this: the party is a tool we can use to help achieve our goals. It serves us. We do not serve it. I will go deep to provide information and analysis you won't get anywhere else in the Hoosier State. And while I'm not motivated by the dollars, everything does cost money, from web hosting and editing software to travel to meet with other activists and organizers. With the jump to video, I needed to upgrade my computer, and that wasn't cheap. But the most valuable thing of all is time. More support from you, dear listeners, means more time to devote to Who's Left, more time to you, more of that sweet content. So if you can, help me out with a paid subscription over at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you can help me push our state in a better direction and maybe help me, from getting a nasty case of drywaller's elbow. And while the best way to help this project is a financial contribution, if you can't afford it at this time, you can still help. Subscribe at the free level over on Substack. Set your favorite podcast player to auto-download new episodes of the show. Rate and review us on whatever platform you use. Follow me on social media at facebook.com/whosleft. That's HOOS left. I'm also on Blue Sky at the same handle. On Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, I'm at ScottRog78. That's SCOTTROG78. On Mastodon at ScottRog78 at Hoosier.social. If you want to see my face or the occasional photobomb from one of my animals, I'm posting full video episodes of the pod on YouTube and clips on TikTok. The handle on both of those is at Who's Left. Subscribe to any and all. But most importantly, share our message. Forward the articles to friends, family, and colleagues. Don't just like, but share on social media. Invite others to this community of Indiana leftists. Nobody's coming to save us. We've got to do it ourselves. With your investment, a full-time HoosLeft could look like new content every day. Full coverage of the 2024 election cycle in Indiana and beyond, and zooming out to see how the networks acting in our state function nationally and even globally. Why am I asking you for money? Because, as Sarah Kenzier says, read all her stuff, by the way, she's amazing. Quote, "It's not cool to paywall political content in a political crisis." End quote. I, like her, believe in open access to information, and your support helps make this knowledge freely available to all Hoosiers. But I desperately need your contributions in order to keep bringing you all of this content, so please, before this interview, pause right now, go to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. To those who have contributed already, my sincere thanks, and to everybody, thanks for listening. Last thing, this interview was recorded prior to the primary, April 25th to be precise. There may be elements referring to the upcoming primary, but everything here is pertinent to the general election. Blythe was the top Democratic vote-getter on May 7th for one of 3 at-large seats on the Johnson County Council. Moving on to November. Here's my interview with Blythe Potter. Blythe Potter, thank you for joining the HoosLeft podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell us about yourself here. Introduce yourself to our listeners.
All right. My name is Blythe Potter. I am almost 42. I own a small business in Bargersville, Indiana called Bargersville Wellness. It's a salon, spa, and yoga studio. I am a licensed esthetician, massage therapist, and yoga teacher. I have a 3-year-old. Her name is Violet. I have 2 stepdaughters. They are almost 18 and almost 21. And I am running for Johnson County Council at Large here in Johnson County on the Democratic ticket. Oh, I'm an Army veteran. My campaign manager keeps telling me, you gotta tell people that.
Yeah, a whole other lifetime ago.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your time in the Army, actually.
I got out. Well, I was in Iraq from 2005 to 2006. I was an MP by training, and I got picked up for a personal security detail in most primarily Baghdad for General George Casey. I was a bodyguard, and I got out in 2012, and until I decided to dip my toe into politics, I haven't thought much of it. So it's interesting being 20 years beyond it and like, oh yeah, I have to talk about this thing that was like such a huge part of my life, and kind of I'm very separated from now. But it was good. I had a good deployment.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you made it back in one piece. That's all you can really ask for, right?
Yes, I made it back physically in one piece. Yes.
So, what prompted you to get involved politically and run for county council there in Johnson County?
Well, this is my second go at running for an office. I ran for Bargersville Town Council last year. I was the only opponent to 3 Republican incumbents. And while I didn't win, we did have the highest voter turnout in the county. And I gave them a run for their money. I got over 33% of the vote. So I consider that a small success. And a lot of the things that were on my platform, they started kind of chipping away. I don't know if that's totally coincidence or not. I choose to think not. But initially, I kind of been thinking about going back to school. Like, how do I create change in my community? Like, not necessarily as a leader per se, but like, how do I lead the charge to be more environmentally friendly, or like to really start bringing people back together? And right about that time, the party chair for the Democratic Party, Amanda Stevenson Holmes, had put in a female, those who identify as a female liberal group here in the area. She had posted, hey, there's still spots on the ballot if anyone's interested in running. And I kind of thought about it, like, you know, like most people, when we retire, maybe I'll get into something like that. And she said that she said last year there were 3 spots open for the town council. I was like, all right, let's do this. Like this could be my way to create change and to spur an community change that I want to be involved with and that keeps me here, because I really do want to stay where we are. I want to keep roots here. But really it's at the point where if we don't start doing something to create change, and for me, I need to stop complaining and try to make something happen. We may have to look at leaving, and I don't want to do that. So that's really what it boils down to. My husband and I complain a lot about a lot of things like reproductive rights and accessibility and affordable housing and healthcare. Like, all right, we can't be the ones complaining about it. We got to try to make something happen. So that's what we're doing. He's running for state rep this year for House District 47. So it's going to be an interesting.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is I've got another interview target to reach.
Yes, hopefully, yes. Hopefully this goes well enough that you would like to interview him. So he's a really cool. He's very brave. After seeing the amount of time and energy and money and everything that it goes into last year, for him to want to do it this year is I'm proud of him. So we'll see. Hopefully we're still singing the same tune in November.
Yeah, right. Well, and you said something like, you're talking about, yeah, I complain now. I have opinions on my local community and I want to get involved, and you want to make that change, right?
Yeah.
And even though you didn't win your last race, you said that some of the items on your platform had been adopted by the Republican incumbents, and that so you just showing up and saying, I'm here and I have my own opinions. You didn't have to win the race to get some movement.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing for other folks in Indiana to remember, that, you might not win, but just showing up and showing that there are other ideas out there does a lot to sort of moderate some of the extremes.
Yes.
Right. And so we'll talk a little bit about Johnson County. Now, for those who don't know, Johnson County is directly south of Indianapolis, right? One of your donut counties around the capital city. So what's the political climate like there? Is it heavily Republican, mixed? I very confidently believe it's mixed.
However, historically, at least for the past several decades, it's been Republican or a red county. But I think a lot of that is, I'm not anti-Republican, right? I think we need a mix of opinions. I think we need a government that reflects and represents its constituents. But I think what has happened is slowly over time that the right wing has gone a little too far in the government sector, not necessarily how the community believes, but the elected officials, and people kind of given up. So we are here. I am not the only Democrat, which is a very happy thing I found out last year. There was a really strong turnout. There's a lot of purple, right? It's like saying there's black and white. No, there is gray area. But historically in government, it's very red. And there are zero, I gotta make sure I'm saying this right. There are 0 Democrats in elected offices in Johnson County. There's one, to my knowledge, independent, and I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct.
Wow, so that's all your town councils, county council, everything. All Republican.
All of them are Republican.
Okay. Wow.
So it's hard, and one of the greatest things about living in Johnson County is we have the lowest tax rates. It's also one of the worst, and people cannot wrap their heads around that. And I will admit, I was one of those people once upon a time, just not really understanding how taxes work, how property taxes work, how tips work, how abatements work, it's really great. We've got this great new company coming in. Yeah, but they're not helping financially with anything. Like we're taking all of this. So when that happens, which when we have low taxes, we have crappy roads, we have next to zero trails. We have next to zero sidewalks. We have next to zero bike lanes. We have parks that could be done better. So a lot of the people, and I find this in a lot of jobs too, the people who are making the decisions aren't always the ones using the end result of that. We are. We're the ones with the kids using the sidewalks and the parks, not these. And I know this is going to sound ageist, and I am not. I think wisdom and age have value, and I think it has value in our government. But when you have primarily retired white people running the show who have money, they aren't the ones using these things that we need. I am the average person. We're predominantly female down here, not a whole lot more than females than male, but there are more women than men. And the average age is 38. So I'm pretty in the middle about where their target audience is for who their constituents are. So I think they're just disconnected on what the bulk of the population are doing and need. So
it's a very narrow point of view. You want more in there just for you just want more voices at the table.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Theoretically. I mean, I don't know. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And, I will give them this. We do have a pretty good representation of women sitting on a lot of the government councils and things. I'd like to see more. But it's still perplexing that, you have, okay, great. We've got these strong women who are being elected. Can we pretend like you know what you're doing? Can we please, for the love of all things holy, make a park entrance that's not in a 50-mile-an-hour zone? Maybe? I don't know. So.
Well, okay. So you've got a largely Republican county. At least it's, Republican run. What's the lay of the land? What are your, the big issues affecting Johnson County residents? I'm sure it looks a lot different than what I'm seeing down here in Monroe County.
Yeah, well, possibly. It could be very similar. It's an interesting spot to be in because we have a lot of growth in the county, not just in the Greenwood and Bargersville towns. The county, there are more people coming in than going out, which is good, right? And I will say, as a county council person, I don't really get to make policy changes or let's add this road, let's add this highway, or whatever. It's budgets and spending. But at the same time, that does get my foot in the door to talk to the people who do make those decisions and be like, hey, this is the money we have. Let's reallocate some of the funds, not necessarily raise taxes. Let's take these tax dollars and put them to better use by doing this. So the biggest problems right now are housing, and it's probably a little bit of everywhere. I would make, if my husband and I sold our home, it's worth over $100,000 more than we purchased it for in 2019, which is great. But we couldn't afford to move. We would be buying a 1-bedroom home almost for the same price, and it's unreasonable. Rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is averaging $1,100 a month. And home rentals are skyrocketing. By and large, a lot of corporations own them. And the average income is $82,000. So more than 50% of the population literally can't afford to live in the county if they were on their own. So it's a problem and it needs fixed. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're struggling with down here also, and it's a nationwide problem, is the lack of affordable housing. And I know, as I've gone through Johnson County, I mean, it is exploding. I always see new developments, new subdivisions, everything going up, and you say more still need a lot more units to get housing or to get mortgages down, rents down.
I'd like to see.
Would you say one of the big issues? Yeah,
I would like to see more multi-family housing or smaller homes. I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, but we've got this huge planned urban development PUD happening here in Bargersville, the town, which is the third fastest growing city in the state town. And the initial plans had townhomes and apartments. Well, they completely nixed the apartments. Not that they would have been affordable. They probably would have been $1,500 and up a month. And then they took the lot sizes and they made them bigger, so there are fewer houses going in. So that's not, it's actually making the problem worse. I don't know that I have a great answer. Like, how do we bring in affordable housing when the prices of everything have gone up? It's a problem. We would have to get creative to be able to do that, and probably have fewer corporations purchasing homes, things of that nature. But something needs to give. But at the same time, we're losing all of our green space and our farmland. So we need to find the nice sweet spot, whatever that looks like. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I bet I can find people who do have the answers to figure out, okay, well, let's plan this.
That's an important thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's to know that you don't have all the answers. Too many people think they do.
There are a lot smarter people who do planning and who do design of things that we can just essentially copy and paste. Like, find me another county with the same problem and what their solution was. Let's do this. So yeah, it is definitely a statewide problem. We are not alone. I understand this, but I do believe, kicking things. I do believe we can find a way to navigate it. I mean, we have to. we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and so one of the problems is density. It sounds like, right? Like we need maybe smaller lot sizes, maybe more townhomes, more apartments, more where you can put more people in a smaller space, so you're not dipping into the green space and the farmland and needing to build all the roads and transportation and all the infrastructure that goes along with spreading out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, creative with the building. Okay, so maybe we have an apartment complex that has a rooftop garden, or maybe we do townhomes that have smaller plots in the backyard with garden plots set up for people to start growing some of their own produce if they want to, and then we put solar panels on top. Like, we can get creative with what we have, I believe, and even the farmland. Okay, so maybe we sell off some of this farmland, but maybe we keep some of it and we regrow a bat reserve or some type of eco something that gets people there to enjoy it, but also helps something in need that might be, endangered, things of that nature. So I think we can get creative. We certainly don't need grass everywhere, which we love to do in the United States. I don't understand it. But yeah, we can have space and make it creative.
Yeah. I love good use of like green space and civic space. One thing we do really well down here in Bloomington and Monroe County is our parks and our green spaces and our trees. Bloomington's a tree city, USA. With Johnson County's a little more spread out. Like, I mean, you got Greenwood, you got Whiteland, you got Franklin, you got Bargersville. Monroe County down here is more like, okay, you got Bloomington, and that's
yeah, a lot of rural areas
of the county, right? So
yeah,
and you got stuff around it, but so like Johnson County is really highly developed and developing more quickly.
Yes.
Is that accurate? So like, what else besides the housing and development are you focusing on in your campaign?
I would like to see something happen with our poverty levels. Those are going up. We do have a pretty large population of veterans, and there's not much happening with our veteran resource officer. My campaign manager is also a veteran, so she's working on that, like even leading up to November. and I'd still like to see better wages. I don't know how that works in a county setting, because obviously the state likes to put what the minimum wage is, but we have a lot of industrial things and bigger corporations down here. I think we could raise salaries a little bit and help compensate for some of the housing problem. That's a pretty good immediate fix right there, is making sure people are being paid enough to live here. Republicans don't like to put people on anything social services, forgetting that the elected officials are a social service, and so are our cops and our firefighters. But we like to pick and choose, right? Like, oh, tax dollars can pay for this, but let's not pay for that. So let's help some of these people. Let's alleviate some of that need. We rely a lot on nonprofits down here. So what we lack in social services is like, oh, well, we'll just make these nonprofits raise all the money and take care of the housing and the drug issues and victims of rape and domestic violence. We'll put that on the nonprofits so we don't have to deal with it as much. No, these nonprofits are great. I don't want to get rid of them, but let's take some of the pressure off of them by doing what government should be doing, is just taking care of their people.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to the low tax rate, right?
Yeah.
With the completely Republican run government, they want to keep the taxes low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nice, but
yeah,
we're not getting any investment. And one of the nice things about taxes is that it's like the original crowdfunding, right?
Yeah.
So the people have more purchasing power for services when they pool their tax resources together. So we can have better stuff more effectively, more efficiently, if we're doing it through government, doing it collectively instead of pawning it off on some nonprofit, because they can't scale like that, right?
Well, and I have to believe, and I could be wrong, I'm fine being wrong, but it doesn't make sense to me. And I know universal health care isn't something that a county will necessarily do, but if we're already all paying several $100s a month or several $1,000s a month for health care through our employer, wouldn't we, in theory, if we're all paying for the same coverage so that you can have coverage and I can have coverage and my neighbors can have coverage, like this love thy neighbor thing we like to do, shouldn't that be less expensive for everyone? I mean, that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
If we're all like taking care of, like putting our money in the same pot to take care of everybody. But actually, I will say there is an incumbent who is running. He's a Republican, of course. He was one of the people who did vote to raise, I can't remember if it was the wheel tax or one of the tax rates last year, to help with some of these things. Because in his own words, if we go with the funding we have now, our roads are going to be like they are until like 2080 or some astronomical, like it will be, I will likely be dead. So it's bad. We have a big problem. So they do realize, a lot of them do realize it, but there are another incumbent who decided, nope, I'm standing firm. I'm voting against this. We're not raising taxes. So they've got some good ideas, just not always implemented or listened to.
Yeah, this is one of those things that you run into at like the lower levels of government, right?
Mm-hmm.
County level, local level. I mean, yeah, you can be like an anti-tax Republican and, blame Washington for everything. But at the end of the day, like in your community, you still have to provide services.
Yes. Safely. Like, and we all like, oh, we love our cops and our firefighters. Well, they're driving the same roads at warp speed with other people on the roads. And that's in good weather. Like, they're also doing it in snow and ice.
Mm-hmm.
So everything just gets, your roads are just like ours. They can be pretty terrible once you get through the winter. So can we just do something about it? Or even working with the state reps. Like, I know there's some nuances with like roads that are shared. Like the county gets help funding for 2 of the lanes, but not all 4 or 5 of the lanes if they get larger. Well, if that's happening, that's a state level problem. So these people who live in the same community with their state reps, why are we not communicating like, hey, you got to fight for this, man? Like, do something here. Let's fix this. Let's work together in making this function better, not just for our county, but for all of them. So there's a lot of disconnects.
Yeah, you've had some words here for the Republican elected officials in your county. You identify as a blue dog Democrat. Like, it's on your website. You say, I am a blue dog, like centrist Democrat. And you were a Republican until 2015. You voted Libertarian in 2016. I hear you talk, and you sound like a Democrat to me.
Well,
you know,
yeah, I mean,
you did all the major points. So, like, I guess what are your, like, what's your political core, right? Like, what are the beliefs, the values that you hold dear, that you take with you despite, these labels?
I think we've really lost community and really taking care of one another, whether that be like one another within our family, one another like with our neighbors. Like, I think COVID has done a lot with that. I think the politics of the last 4 to 8 years have had a lot to do with that, and media and things like that. But I really think I feel like I'm pretty reasonable, and I think most people at their core are too, but we've gotten so pitted against each other that we've forgotten that we still have to work together if we want this earth to survive. And I don't feel like that should be a political thing, like our survival as a species and then other species as well. So I guess at my core is just like people try whatever logical means to me, making logical decisions that benefit the most people with what we have. And I guess that makes me a Democrat. Like, I don't see how that's, if we want to get religion involved in it, that's certainly more of a Christian view to have, which doesn't seem to be a liberal thing.
I mean, there's lots of different flavors of Christian, right?
There is. If you go to its core, though, right? If you think about it at its core, from its infancy 2,000 years ago, it's a pretty liberal mindset.
Well, I could go on, but that's a whole other episode.
That's a different series of podcasts. So
yeah, some of which I listened.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing though is like you're pragmatic, right? Like, you're willing to compromise, you're willing to look at solutions, just like, hey, yeah, whatever works. If that's what works, let's do it. You're not driven by, you're not an ideologue, right?
No.
You're not committed to the solution before you even find out what the problem is.
Yeah. I am rarely committed to an outcome. As long as at the end of the day, ideally, everyone is fed, has safe housing, has a safe space, a living wage, which all, mental health encompasses a lot of that, right? And can get to where they need to get in whatever manner they are doing so. I think we've succeeded. So that would be the long-term goal. It's just get the bulk of the people mostly in a good spot.
Yeah, and that's not an out there idea, right?
No.
I mean, that's not radical left, as I imagine some on the right would call it.
Yeah, and if that's what it is, then that's what it is. Then that's fine. That's where my life is right now. But yeah.
Is that what caused you to leave the Republican Party? Was the rightward drift?
I don't know. I don't know that it's one thing. It was a series of things. Like, I grew up in a Republican home, and it's just what you did. You voted Republican, you support your army. And it's actually been very hard for me to reconcile the fact that I can identify as a liberal, which I think I'm just a human. I'm a humanist. I want humans to survive, and live with nature appropriately without taking too much of anything from anyone or anything. So I guess that makes me a Democrat if we want to put a label on it. But really, it's hard to be proud of the flag and my service and say Democrat, because I feel like we've lost the ability to do that as liberals or anybody but Republicans. Like, we're in this country too. And I saw what was kind of happening in 2015, 2016. I was like, well, I couldn't bring myself to vote Democrat because that's just not what you did in my family. So anyway, we'll go libertarian, which was really kind of a dumb idea. But it's really just learning over time. Like, internet has helped, social media has helped, oddly enough, and it's done a lot of dividing, but I've also done a lot of relearning and unlearning things that I thought to be true, which is also very hard, right? Like, you grow up being taught this is the way things are, then you have to realize, like, whoa, I've been getting wrong information. Like, Christopher Columbus, he was a hero. No, he's not. He was a turd. So just things like that, like, kind of, it's been a slow drift. Even last year when I first signed up to run for town council, it took a lot for me to say out loud and publicly that I'm a Democrat. My family, that's not how they identify even a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though their beliefs are not that different from mine. And my beliefs now aren't that different from when I was always pro-abortion my whole life. So it's a hard thing to.
Republicans have done a very, very good job. Yeah. Demonizing the word liberal, right?
They have.
Whereas, liberal was always, going back to like the founding of this country, right? Like, we invented liberal democracy here.
Yes.
And liberal was just supposed to mean we all come together, we all debate, we all hash out our ideas, and we come to a consensus. Liberal means centrist, right? But when you're to the right of the center, you have to attack the center as extreme as you drift further off to the right, and then so it becomes this bad word. Like, there's no meaningful left in this country. Like, the center is as left as it gets.
Yeah. When you have conversations with people too, even hard, like, I've got some hardcore MAGA Republican friends who agree with me on a lot of things. And it's just mind-blowing. Like, how can you put this label on yourself or on me, but agree with me with so much? It's exhausting. I don't understand it.
Most do, because I think, and this is just my view on it, is that people on the left and the right both largely agree that a few people have too much power. And the people on the right think those too few people are the government that has too much power. And the people on the left generally think those too few people that have too much power are the corporate interests, right? Or, well, and it turns out we're both mad at the same people.
Yes.
Because the corporate interests in the government are, like, the corporate interests own the government, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so much effort, I think, placed on keeping us apart, having something for people to fight over, keep us divided. Conflict is good for clicks and views. But really, we have way more in common than
we do.
Than we have differences.
Yeah. What has happened, and you're exactly right. It by and large, Republican government decisions that have allowed billionaires and millionaires to pay fewer taxes than you and I, which make sense. Like, if we just raise the wealth tax, we solve all the problems except guns. We literally solve like almost all of the problems financially. So why aren't we changing that? And pitting us against each other, arguing with our community members, distracts from the real problem. And I think that's partially, I hate to think that people could think this way, but it has to be by design. It has to be.
It sounds like conspiratorial, right? Like there's a bunch of like bad, like there's a bunch of guys in dark back rooms smoking cigars and twirling their mustaches, but really that's just the profit motive. I mean, that's what this is what capitalism does. It worms its way into government, and it worms its way into media, and it capital will always serve itself, and that's
but there used to be more ethics in the economy. Economics did have once upon a time more ethical bearings. I don't know how we went off the rails, but you can do capitalism in an appropriate way. What is it called now? Ecological economy or conscious capitalism?
Oh, yeah, and you get the ESG, which Republicans are trying to make illegal.
Yes. Like, where are you all going to go when we've depleted all of our resources? Because it will happen. Like,
they'll be fine. It's the rest of us that you got to worry about.
Yeah, but it is a problem. You can't keep taking and taking and taking. I cannot remember for the life of me the podcast I just recently listened to about that. Oh, it was the Politics Girl podcast. Did an interview with someone about that recently. It was amazing. You would love it. You gotta listen to it. I'll try to remember to send it.
I like her. I haven't listened to her podcast, but I catch her on Twitter and whatnot occasionally.
She has the best hosts. So I'm like, yes, I agree with that. This is awesome. So, yeah.
So, well, yeah, she's a let's call her a non-traditional political figure, right?
Yeah.
And I would say you are also a non-traditional political figure, right? You got the nose ring, for all the people who aren't watching on YouTube. Blythe's got the nose ring and has some great ink.
Thank you.
Do you?
I saw you got some too.
Yeah, I got a few, but do you run into problems like when you're canvassing or just you're at a fundraiser and like what? Are people like what is this? This is
absolutely,
this is not politics. Yeah.
Yep. I had several people last year because my headshot last year I was in a tank top, and so that's part of the thing though. That's part of me being an open book. I don't want someone to elect me physically because of what they see and then see me walking around town with this arm full of tattoos. Like, what? Like, I don't want to feel like I was trying to dupe them. I don't want to lie. But first impressions make a big difference. And I've always known that. I know it's not new information. But I did have a guy walk up to me last year. He's like, I really like your platform, but your tattoos. And I was like, yeah, my tattoos wouldn't be making any decisions for you, but yeah, got it. I've got tattoos. Like, I appreciate.
It's so weird that people are still upset about that.
It is so weird. It is 2024, and I understand it. For a long time, all of my tattoos were hidden because that's just what you did. If you wanted to be taken as a professional, particularly in the military, you gotta hide that nonsense. So it's a little bit of my like, take that. I can be professional with tattoos. But I also grew up with My Little Ponies, and they had like tattoos all over those dang unicorns. So yeah, I like tattoos. I'm gonna blame whoever makes My Little Ponies. So
you know what? I had not thought about that angle before, but it's true. It's true. Look, you're a philanthropist who commissions original art.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Blaze it wherever you go, right? Yes.
Yeah, a lot of the sleeve is actually a result of some pretty severe postpartum anxiety, right? Well, I have a COVID baby. I got pregnant in November of 2019, found out in December of 2019, and we all know what happened January 2020. And shortly after I had my daughter, my two stepdaughters just completely stopped talking to me for almost 2 years, not because of my daughter. So there was a lot of like trauma with that. Like I was very concerned my daughter was going to die pretty much on a regular basis for several years there. So most of this is like remembering things that she loved as a baby and when she was a toddler. It's also family, like birth flowers. I had, so it kind of was a result of that, but I've also always wanted some tattoos. So kind of, it's an interesting part.
I think we need. No, that's great. We need more politicians with tattoos, and more nose rings, and just more people that are like representative and just like the average person. You know, like you said, there's far too many old white dudes, old comfortable white dudes who are running everything and just don't have that perspective. They don't understand, you know, how much groceries are, or the struggles of day-to-day life.
Cost of childcare. Childcare is another big problem down here.
Yes.
Good Lord, it's insane. You got to get on a list. Like as soon as you know you're pregnant, you got to get on a list or you're not going to have daycare. And it's about a mortgage payment.
Did they do any through the schools there in Johnson County?
There is. Center Grove has got one preschool option with their school system, but I believe it's only for teachers. I am very likely wrong on that, and I know I should know this answer, but I don't. And I've got some statistics on number of seats needed for daycare in the county versus how many are available, and it is bad. It is very, very bad. We spend about $900 a month on daycare, and that's actually cheap. Most places are $1,500 and up. So with terrible hours, like dropping off at 9:30 and picking up at 3:30. I mean, I had to cut back my hours at work just to have a kid and be able to see her. So my income dropped having her just to be able to physically see her. But now I also have to pay for childcare to be able to run my business and, you know, help pay for stuff. It's a mess. It's a total mess. And we are not poor people. We are above average income. And it's still very, very hard. And I know I'm not the only one in this position. So we are not the only ones in this position. Childcare is a mess.
There are certain things that, well, you talk about it all over your website about conscious capitalism, right? And like, you know, you're a business owner. Like, you're not some like raging commie. You are a capitalist, right?
Yeah.
You own your own business. But capitalism is great for a lot of things. But there are certain things it does not do well. And provide childcare and provide elder care are a couple of those things that capitalism does not do well.
Elder care is a totally different. Have you had to experience any of that with your parents?
Well, it's like trickle-down effect, right? My wife's grandmother is 93 years old, right? Lives in assisted living, but needs more care than the facility can provide. So you've got like my mother-in-law and then her sisters, my wife's aunts, you know, and her uncle go over there and spend nights with grandma. And so then when my mother-in-law spends nights with grandma, then like we wind up taking care of her dog. So it's just like it's minor stuff on this end, but it's just like it's trickle-down effect, you know?
It's disruptive. We're going through, and I say we, even though I'm doing, well, I take care of my daughter when my husband is helping his dad. So my husband has got 2 siblings, and my father-in-law is in a care facility for rehab, but there's essentially still babysitting him nearly around the clock because there's just not enough help there to like feed him, get him to the bathroom. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible how bad it is. And I've known it was bad because I have a lot of clients with aging parents and who've been through this. So I've heard the horror stories, but living it, even if it's not physically my parent, it's rough. And I don't know what a good solution is when his when his time in rehab is up. Like we're either going to be shelling out a lot of money to help put him somewhere or bring him in one of our homes.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us want that. He doesn't want that. We don't necessarily want that. My in-laws don't want that. It's hard. So again, not something county council can do, but it is a problem. It's a big problem.
Right, but I mean, yeah, you might not be able to do something about it, but it's important to bring that perspective to the table because, you know, if it's affecting you, it's affecting me, it's affecting countless people in our communities. And the guys, and it's all guys for the most part, who were running things, don't get it. They don't get it because if, you know, they got a loved one that needs care, well, you just throw money at the problem.
Yeah. They were in a good enough financial situation to take care of it. Hope, God willing. I mean, maybe their parents didn't make it to old age. I don't know. It's not my story to tell, but yeah, it's hard. It's pretty brutal.
So, what time has flown. We are coming up here on the end. So, like, give us, you know, take us home. Give us the closing pitch. Talk about why Johnson County needs Blythe Potter come this November.
Okay. I like to listen to people, and I think a lot of the things that I want are things that a lot of the community want. And that was one of the interesting things last year doing the canvassing. It's the same things over and over again. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. We want roads that are drivable. We don't want to be paying so much money in taxes that we can't afford to live. Same with housing. We don't want to be paying so much that we can't afford to live or take a vacation. Same with childcare. Same with healthcare. Like, we're all basically in the same boat. And there's probably about 15% extreme on both sides, but the rest, the 70% of us in the middle we want to be able to live and be able to live well. And I'm a champion for that. I'm a champion for bringing people together. It doesn't matter what you identify with as political party. Like, I want to serve our community. I want to listen, and I want to make things make sense. And if nothing else, I want to put the problems on a platform so someone else can do it for me if they're elected and I'm not. And I'm absolutely fine with someone else doing the work if that's what it comes down to. So we need change. We need good change for the majority of Johnson County.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Blythe Potter. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you joining the HoosLeft.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for making time for this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'll have to, have you back before the general. Once again, that was Democratic candidate for Johnson County Council, Blythe Potter. One look at Blythe Potter and you know you're not dealing with your stereotypical idea of an elected official. Some of her publicity photos from last year's city council race show the towering Potter, her icy blue eyes staring out over a studded nose, face framed by a purple bob, bearing a tattooed right arm, detailed floral work flowing from shoulder to hand. Good. Yeah, more of this, please. Our elected officials should be more representative of our communities, and that goes for the body art crowd, too. Here are some fun statistics from a study published last year by Pew Research Center. 32% of American adults, including 38% of women, have at least one tattoo. Adults under 50 are especially likely to have a tattoo. Some 41% of those under 30 have at least one, as do 46% of those ages 30 to 39. That's almost half. I find this particularly neat, and this is a direct quote. There are no major differences by political party, or whether Americans live in an urban, suburban, or rural community. A third of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents have a tattoo, as do 32% of Republicans and Republican leaners. And roughly a third of adults across urban, suburban, and rural areas report having a tattoo. There are no differences between veterans and non-veterans either. End quote. And while there's been a ton of cultural movement on this just in my lifetime, about 30% of the ink-free crowd still says seeing a tattoo on someone else leaves a negative impression. That number goes up the older, richer, or whiter the respondent. 40% of those ages 65 and older have a negative impression of people with tattoos. And though we didn't come at it from a body art angle, Blythe and I certainly noticed that a lot of old, comfortable, white, probably inkless dudes are doing okay while the rest of us struggle. In areas like Johnson County and all throughout the Hoosier state, older established property owners, maybe they inherited land or purchased long before the recent building boom, control the levers of government and use that power to lock in their gains, keep taxes low on their now incredibly valuable property, and fight the creation and extension of government services, bonus points if they or their buddies own and operate a business that provides services a government could provide efficiently without some asshole having to take their cut. They're still operating as if they live in a rural backwater when, in fact, there are now whole-ass communities in what used to be cornfields. Many in those communities increasingly want to act like the cities they've become, and embrace the shared responsibility that goes with that. The get off my proper taw ethos might fly when your nearest neighbor is a mile down the road, but it turns out that when communities grow and people increasingly live closer together and get to know their neighbors and realize deep down the overwhelming majority of us are good people just trying to do their best, we're more willing to chip in so we can all have nice things like police, fire protection, sewer hookups and trash pickup, sidewalks and streetlights, no matter what we look like. And the suburbs increasingly look like cool moms with tattoos. This is one of the fault lines I'm looking at as we turn to general election mode. As noted in the introduction, the suburbs are increasingly Democratic. In many metropolitan areas, the shift is complete. Suburban Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Atlanta just pushing Biden over the wannabe fascist dictator Trump in 2020. As is tradition, trends get to Indiana a little later than other parts of the country, so just as we've all learned about Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Gwinnett County, Georgia, and Macomb County, Michigan, this year, Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, I'm looking at you. Greenwood, Brownsburg, Bargersville, I'm looking at you. Avon, Zionsville, Plainfield, pay attention. Granger, New Carlisle, I see you. Boonville, Newburgh, I didn't forget about you down there. Munster, Dyer, Cherville, you guys up by Chicago, and you, Sellersburg, Scottsburg, and Clarksville, y'all down by Louisville. Your big city might be in a different state, but you are Hoosiers. And this election day, you and your tattooed moms need to show up. And not just one Tuesday, but for all of the organizing and get out the vote work leading up to November 5th. Mark my words. The ruling class will tighten the economic screws between now and then. I wouldn't be surprised to see $6 a gallon gas come October. They will try to make you choose between your comfort and your conscience, your money over your morality, your valuables over your values. We've got to put our energy, our time, and our money where our "in this house" sign is, if we want to beat back the scourge of authoritarian Christian nationalism and permanently tattoo the mark of loving kindness on our communities and our state. As of this recording, there are 168 days until the 2024 general election. What are you doing to make your mark? Thanks for listening. Thank you to my guest today, Blythe Potter. You can find her at blythepotter.com. As for yours truly, you can find me on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at HoosLeft, and on most other social media sites at ScottRodge78. If you want to send me a message, slide up in my DMs on the social media or email me at scottrodge78@gmail.com. If you haven't yet done so, when you're finished here, please go to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. Help me keep this project going. Until next time, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.